Hi, this is Joseph. It's 6/18/2019, Tuesday. Going to be looking at SPY. And we created a new indicator today, and it's based on the zone being the neutral zone, Chart Mojo Neutral Zone, between the vwap, which is the gray cross, and the gold dots, 50% of the developing range. And the contention is outside of the opening 1 minute range. That's the second biggest gravity, and price unwinds to that zone, especially at around 10:30, which would be right there, and around 1:15, which would be right there. Tends to wedge up there at 1:15. If you did put on some trend lines there, you'd see what I was talking about. Let's see, 1:15-ish. So I'm always looking forward to try to wedge up and pin it up in that zone, in the at that time zone, and do a positioning move toward it at 1:15 and also at 10:30-ish. On a tendency range day, that is a strong tendency. It tends to happen more times than not. Doesn't always happen. So you look for it, and if it happens, you can capitalize on it. If it doesn't, well, you can judge it against what's actually happened. You can judge the tendency against what's actually happened. Trend versus tendency, trend versus range. It's a little battle that's always going on. But anyway, let's take a look at how that works. Today was a weird day because it had a quick push at pre-Fed, and Trump was talking, and he said he's going to meet with Z at G20, so they put that big move on there. It's total BS, but that's okay. So this is with the overnight session on also, but I wanted to show this compared to. So if you're looking at this as a second biggest gravity, the zone, the Chart Mojo Neutral Zone, which is between VWAP and 50% of range, where price often returns after a wave exhausts, just tends to range around that area and or the opening 1 minute range. It takes real velocity and a catalyst to keep going and drift away from that. But anyway, let's compare that to the Ichi. Now, Ichi Cloud has, the essence of it is really that it looks at, it takes a 50% retrace zone of certain look back periods. So in a sense, it's doing what this is doing, but it's doing it over whatever specified periods you want to look back at. So it creates this kind of thick cloud. I've really tried to make it work. I've used it a lot, and I could never really get it to do what I wanted it to do. So I, for the most part, don't look at it. Occasionally I'll glance at it just to see how things are. I do like the way it trades around flat zones in the cloud, because that's what that is really squeezing more different look back periods into a 50% retrace. But anyway, to me, I can accomplish that much better with this. So I just wanted to show you that. Now I'm going to take this off, the overnight, and I'm going to look at the other Chart Mojo opening 1 minute range data, so with these two indicators on, you get the opening 1 minute range, which is this yellow zone, which is the big gravity. It's the stasis gravity, and I'll show you what that does on other days in a minute. And then we get the 30-minute opening range. So today it was a strong up move, even broke through that 30-minute range, even went a little bit higher. But once again, it came back to the zone at 10:30-ish and at 1:15. So there was some tendency operating within the big up day. So it's still sort of operating on a partially range characteristics and partial trend characteristics. But let's take a look back and notice how much time it spent in that neutral zone. If you were to take that off there, well, let's add volume profile, and you'll see what the point of control was doing. And but I don't want to get too far into that today. But I just want you to notice how much time it spends out in the Chart Mojo gravity zone. Quite a bit. Let's go back and look at yesterday. By the way, that's a super wide zone, and normally it gets thinner as those get tighter to each other toward the end of the day, and that zone tends to get really narrow, but it still tends to come back and hit this at around 10:30 and 1:15. And it's usually much thinner And if you're in TradingView, you can see me putting ellipses on there and see how many times it actually hits right on. But let's look here. There's a 1020, so there was an initial move, and around 1045 they start thinking about getting neutral, and they put the move on generally 950 to 1010 ish, and back to neutral, and that's what happened there. And then after that, it can go wherever they put a new motive, a new power onto it, new urging onto it, and so you get a move away from that. Which this is a gravity, this is a moving away. It takes like force to get out of the gravity. But then once again, where's 115? So 115, it's back to the zone, the Chartmojo Neutral zone, which is the orange shaded area. So this is a new indicator. We just posted it. It's free. It's called the Chartmojo Chartmojo Neutral Unwound Cloud. So it's a new cloud. It's not an Ichi cloud. Good luck making that work, especially intraday. It has some interesting aspects to it, but you really have to understand what 50% retraces are all about, in my opinion, to make it valuable. But this works, to me, this works much better. This is a new look for a new age, really. So look how many times it comes back there. Hits one, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't know. If you break it down into 1 minute, it's probably like 30 times it returns there. And then a couple times to opening 1 minute range gravity, which that's kind of a typical day right there. 80%, 70, 80% of the time. Here's another sort of typical day. And what does it do? Puts on a move, 945.50, puts on a counter move to 950 to 1010ish, and at 1030, where is it? It's right there. It's right in the middle of the Chartmojo Neutral zone. So then everything goes on, goes about your day, returns to the opening 1 minute range a few times. Notice that right to the middle, where there's a sell tier waiting for it. And then back, and then where is it at 115? Let's see, there's 115 right there. Touches right to the zone. So it's a tendency. You got to look at it for a long time, get used to it. You'll get a feel for it. It doesn't always go there, so how do you deal with that when it doesn't? Well, that tells you something. That tells you what the bias is at that point. If it's above it, the bias is bullish. If it's below it, the bias is bearish at that moment. But it's a generally, it's a tendency that you can capitalize on. You can get positioning trades to it. You can become aware when it's breaking away from it. Like for instance, at midday when it does that, you can you can wedge it in, box it in, and take the breaks, etc. Wherever it was back there, really. So I kind of do that ahead of time, so I know what's happening. I see it coming, try to get the positioning trades to it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, there's a pennant wedge at 115, so you just keep drawing your pennant, extending it out, and putting boxes on it, rectangles, and you wait for them to make a big break, and you try to catch the right one. And often, and I like what I prefer to see is the gravity of the 1 minute range eventually pick this up and pull it back. It did that here. It does it often. Does something like that here. Toward the end of the day, it was like, come on, make a run. It wanted to go back to this, but there was some kind of huge support in there, as you can tell by those wicks. There was a bunch of orders just lined up there. I think people left for the day, and they just left buys on there. But anyway, so there's a new indicator in town. A new cloud was born today, the Chartmojo Neutral Cloud, and it's the shaded in zone between 50% zone and vwap, 50% of developing range for the day. Everything's intraday on this. And I want to thank Noiz and Gwaff for helping with the coding on that. It's really sweet. Helps you know where that zone is just at a glance. This is a freakishly large one. It's not usually like that. It's more like this. And once you get used to the 1 minute range and this, and also the 30 minute, and then the way things trade at the highs and lows of the day. By the way, that indicator does give you the high and the low of the day too. then you know how to, you'll understand when it approaches it here, and there's a buy tier sitting right in front of it as it's coming down. People tend to target it from up here, and they put a buy tier on it to cover above it and below it. So it starts running into that, and it jingles around, and the buyers start moving up to it, and then more people start selling, and it does that. And then it breaks through and does something else. Up here it was interesting because it did this little thing and bounced off of it where the buy tier would be. Came down here, bounced around a little bit. And then when it came, notice what happened when it came down in. It did this boom, 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 boom. So you can see how it's contained, sort of like a Bollinger Band or a Keltner channel. There are people using it, and they are lining up sell tiers in front of that, buy tiers in front of this. Well, some on it, some above it, some below it. So it just depends on how many are there and how hard the selling pressure is to how far it goes into a tier. Eventually it broke through, popped right back. There was some kind of bunch of buys down here. Probably a fib extension off this. But anyway, so if you get used to looking at that and the 1 minute zone, 1 minute opening, 1 minute range, you'll start to see how they trade around it and how they target it from extremes. So from up here, they're targeting this first. Does that little stutter right there. And then they're targeting this, the middle of this. Price moves, in my mind, from confluence to confluence. It's not random. It may, it doesn't move to like one MA or one of this or one that. It moves to a confluence of things. It's generally moving to a confluence of these things and point of control. And each leg has its own point of control and own Fibonacci's and 50% range zone. So if you were to look at that, do volume profile, do fixed range, and then just put it on the any last leg you're in will give you all kinds of information. You can see how that point of control drop down right at the very end. I like that. Move to price, so that becomes the biggest churn level of that leg, and that often is, if this was longer, if it wasn't the end of the day, then you start whenever point of control moves to price, you start looking to see which side defends. It probably would have capped it on the bottom side and started going back up. But anyway, that's just a few random thoughts on this. The main thing is, don't trade off of it, but use it for confirmation. Watch it for a long time till it makes a lot of sense to you. You don't just learn something when you're trading and then just go do it with live money. When you enter the market, you're paying to play against pros, and the pros aren't everywhere, but they're in enough places to get you, and 90% of the time. So you have to be careful. But when you're introduced to a new tool like this, you have to look at it and watch it for a while, see if it works, see if you see it actually urging towards it at certain times of the day. Notice the relationship between it and the opening 1 minute range. Does it ever get down in the 1 minute range and then there's like super gravity? Yeah, like right here. Look at that. You've got it smack in the middle of the opening 1 minute range. And what's everything doing? It's ranging right around it. And that was going to end a stasis day. It was going to end right where it started, and then there was some kind of freakish news or covering that did this little thing there. But yeah, it was just ranging around it all day. That even the secondary gravity of the 50% range of vwap the cloud, our Chart Mojo Neutral cloud, couldn't get out of the way of the opening 1 minute range cloud. So anyway, watching those things gives you a different dimension, an added dimension to the usual tools that are out there, and I really like it. I think if you try it, you might like it. If you don't see anything, well, you don't see anything. People see different things, and you see different things over time. Have a good night.